Good morning, boys and girls. It's Mr. Ashley, and today we're going to be learning about the ancient Greek city-state, Sparta. There are two ancient Greek city-states that most people think of when we think of ancient Greece, and that would be Sparta and Athens. Both of them are on the coast of Peloponnesus in different areas. Down here we see Sparta here on the southern part towards the island of Crete, and we see Athens over here on the eastern part of Peloponnesus. And they have very different societies, even though they were both extremely successful and both extremely powerful. Sparta is going to be a much more warrior-based society, where Athens is going to be a much more education-based society. So let's take a look really quickly at what Sparta looks like. We're looking at Sparta. There are about 100,000 people in Sparta, and they're an agricultural-based society. They're producing for their own needs. They're not trying to produce for, other nations. They're not trying to trade. They're not trying to do all that kind of stuff. Even though they are situated on the sea, they are mostly concerned with their own selves. In fact, their society really prioritizes the city-state of Sparta over everything else. Doesn't want them to communicate too much with the outside world. Just kind of stay inside the walls that the boundaries of Sparta make up. Sparta is a agricultural-based society, mostly also because of how they look. Right, they are in a mountainous area surrounded by plains. It made it just an easier thing for them to be agriculture-based. Even though they are, on the sea, and they kind of avoided that. Their government style is going to be an oligarchy. Oligarchies are when small groups of powerful individuals lead the nation. Unlike other city-states, Sparta's going to stay away from democracy, and they're also going to stay away from monarchies. They don't want one person to have all the power, but they also don't want to have to go through these different systems and these different waves of people in power. They want just a select group of people to lead and to make all the decisions throughout a lifetime, essentially. We take a look at Spartan education. They are going to be one of the few ancient civilizations that is going to prioritize education not just for boys but also for girls. And their education isn't going to be, book learning. It's not going to be, learning about sciences and things of that nature. It's going to be based on military and making the society of Sparta stronger. It's not really geared towards learning as an individual. You guys take all sorts of classes that prioritize you to become individuals, like art classes. You take music classes. You take writing and reading classes, and these are supposed to help you to fall into your own as a learner, to become a creative individual in your own right. But in Sparta, that's not what they're prioritizing. In Sparta, they're prioritizing you to think more about the people around you as a nation, rather than thinking about yourself. So the age of 6, boys will be sent off to military school, and there you're going to learn survival skills. A lot of times these boys, when you're taken away from your parents at age 6, you're buck naked, right? You actually earn clothes as you advance through military school. So you're basically naked this entire time until you get to like the ages of 6, and then you might get like a robe, or you get to like age 10 and then you get sandals and stuff like that. So these survival skills that they're learning, the first one is, how to do without, right? If you're a warrior, a lot of times you're doing without. You're doing without food, you're doing without clothes, you're doing without comfort. So teaching these boys how to do without, that's going to be step number 1. Step number 2 is how to scrounge. So they would actually encourage these boys to steal. They'd teach them all sorts of different tactics, and a lot of times they just kind of send them loose throughout the city-state of Sparta and say, like, go survive for a few weeks, right? Just try and scrounge up as much as you can and survive. And if they got caught stealing, they'd be punished, but not for stealing, but for getting caught. The punishment was because you got caught, not because you stole. So a lot of times these kids would get caught. And like I said, it's not because you didn't do a bad thing because you stole. You did a bad thing because you got caught stealing. So a lot of different survival skills are learned here. A lot of times these kids would be thrown out into the wilderness for weeks or months at a time with no clothes, no food, no nothing. And they had to survive. That's literally the test, is can you survive for 2-3 weeks, 2 months, whatever. So imagine, age 6, you guys probably like first grade or kindergarten. If we just took you guys out in the middle of the woods, we dropped you off there and said, all right, now survive for 2 weeks. Probably wouldn't turn out all that well, and definitely probably some lawsuits on our end. But that's what Spartan school was all about. It's teaching these kids how to do without and how to be warriors. If you advanced high enough, boys at the age of 18 would go off to cadet school, and there you're learning the art of war. You're learning how to do things like, strategize for war. You're learning about how to, craft weapons. You're learning about how to, logistically go through war, like making sure that you can move troops and making sure that you can get all sorts of different supplies in and all that kind of stuff. You're learning that. Girls, on the other hand, age 6, they are going to be taken away from their parents. They're going to learn things like wrestling and gymnastics. That's going to be important for them because they're thought of as like the last line of defense. They're not going to be going off to war, but if Sparta ever gets attacked, the girls are going to have to be able to fend for themselves. Women, these girls are going to learn all sorts of things. Like they're going to learn how to, just like the boys actually, they'll learn basic, first aid, things of that nature. And that's pretty much the closest thing to science that they're going to get is, how to like mend wounds and stuff like that. The girls are also going to, learn how to make weapons and learn how to make clothes and all that kind of stuff. And they're going to be also trained to become, homemakers, to keep the home front stable while the men are off at war. It's important to note that also most of these girls couldn't read. Many of the boys couldn't read either. Like I said, education here for the Spartans looks a lot different than education does here in the United States today. And this is just taking a look at the military really quickly. So when we're talking about Sparta, it's a military-focused nation. They don't have a navy, and they wear red for a very specific reason. Like we said, they're not wearing all that much clothes, but the clothes they're wearing is red because if they get attacked, they don't want other nations to know that they are bleeding. They want to be thought of as this incredibly fierce fighting force that is so outrageously inhuman that they, don't even bleed during battle. The red uniform covers up their wounds, and I think that's just so cool. Such a cool idea. That these Spartans are so well trained to deal with pain and all that kind of stuff that it doesn't even show when they get wounded because of their uniforms that they've been attacked, that they've been hurt. So it's kind of like playing like psychological games with the people that they're fighting against. And like we said, they're a military-based society. They learn a lot about military, and their strategies are top-notch. This picture right here shows what's called a phalanx. A phalanx is when you set up row after row of warriors, and you interlock your weapons. So in this picture right here, it's interlocking spears. And the idea here is that you might be able to get through the first row, but you're not getting through the second row. These spears are laying through one another so that you really have to try and attack them from the sides. A lot of times, though, the people on the sides here have shields. They're able to turn and pivot. So you really, in order to defeat this phalanx, you either have to get on the sides or try and attack from the back. But even that's not going to be an easy fix because they could always just turn around. So this formation right here is very stable. It's kind of like trying to fight a turtle. It's kind of slow moving, sure, but because they're so well disciplined and they're so, tight knit together, it's going to be really hard. You got to really fight your way through the phalanx in order to beat these people. The daily life of Sparta, the Spartans are divided up into three different groups of people. You got your full citizens who are called Spartarites. These are people who pass through. These are the men who pass through the cadet school. These are your warrior class people. Then you have your Periosi, which are your middle class. These people didn't really pass through the school. They've kind of learned trades and things of that nature. They're merchants. They're those kinds of things. And then you have your helots. You have your slaves. Helots are, for the most part, captured people. They're not allowed to be full citizens. They're treated very subserviently. And they basically do all the support stuff. They grow the crops, they harvest, they do all that kind of thing. Helots are going to be frequently abused. In Sparta, they want, again, like I said, that they're really trying to make sure that the people of the nation think of themselves as a whole rather as individuals. So they teach the kids at a young age, the dangers of things like alcohol. And one of the ways they do that is they get the helots extremely drunk, and to the point where they're sick and they're basically dying. And it's supposed to scare the kids and also be something to mock, right? So they're gonna have these little kids mocking these incredibly drunk helots that are basically dying of alcohol poisoning, to show them the dangers of alcohol. They are going to do a lot worse things to the helots. Like we said earlier, if you got caught stealing, the punishment wasn't for stealing. The punishment was for getting caught stealing. They would actually have wars against their slave race. And they would actually encourage these boys that are in this military school to go out and kill the biggest slaves. Part of the reason is because the slave class here is so large. It's by far the largest group of people in Sparta. It's larger than the full citizens, the Spartarites, and the middle class combined. And so they're always kind of worried about some sort of a slave rebellion. So oftentimes they'll have, at least once a year, these boys go out and they have to try and kill the largest slaves. And they have to do it in a way that they don't get caught. Because, again, the punishment that they're going to receive isn't for killing people. The punishment is for getting caught killing people. This is going to lead to a lot of different slave rebellions in Sparta, varying in success. But because the Helots are such a large class of people, they use these wars and they use these different attacks on these people in order to keep them in a subservient role. And then finally, we come down to this last part here where women actually have rights in Sparta. Most ancient civilizations, women did not have any rights whatsoever, but women could do all sorts of things in Sparta. They could own land, they could... they were really seen as equals, able to do everything that the men could do. And actually, one more thing that I want to talk about before I leave here is, this idea of, this militarized nation. They were such a militarized nation that, we talked about their schooling, their daily life was suffering, right? It's suffering for the greater good. You're living without food, you're starving, you're living without clothes, you're freezing. You're living on your own, you're trying to scrounge and do that kind of stuff. That's your schooling. When these people would go to war, it was almost like vacation for them. That these warriors would be sent off to these different city-states to attack them, and they would actually have an opportunity to, get a full meal or to sleep all day and not have to worry about, the next time they're going to get attacked by their teachers or their peers and stuff like that. They didn't have to worry about that during war. All they had to worry about was, whenever the next battle was. So war for them was kind of like a vacation. That's where they get this kind of romanticism for war in Sparta. But that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day here, and I hope to see you guys in class soon.